Hey YouTube, Alex here with another video, and today hopefully is a short one. We're going to go through a few of the frames from Before I Made It, a short documentary that we filmed with Liz. It's kind of a two-part series. The other video will be out in a few weeks' time, and it's a video about the whole process on how we shot a documentary for next to $0. And this one is kind of going through a few more of the frame breakdowns and how we were able to sort of move quickly on our feet and be able to bring hopefully a high production value piece to a small budget production. If you haven't seen the film yet, I'll leave a link in the description below. I'll just quickly talk about the camera because I know that everybody's always interested, but we shot the piece on the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K. And among other cameras that I've owned, I've been an owner-operator of the 6K for years now, and when I'm on small budget or self-funded jobs, it's definitely one of the best cameras on the market for the price. So we'll go through some of the frames here. I've got my iPad, I've got my little pencil here, and we'll start breaking them down. The most important frame of any documentary piece, if you choose to make one, is an interview frame. This is because you're able to land on that frame whenever nothing else is going on. If you lose an entire scene, but you have a beautiful talking head and you have a couple of different camera angles, and if it looks great, you don't feel the need as an editor to always want to cut away from it. So it's really important to make your interview frame as good as possible. And I think that we did a fairly good job here. I think it's one of my favorite frames of this piece. Her sister was kind enough to lend us her living room, and that's where we shot it. I chose to build a book light for the interview frame because they're one of the most flattering sources of light. They're big, they're soft, and they provide tons of wrap around the face, which always looks really nice. We've got our A camera here, which is our widest. It's our 35mm Nikon f1.4, and this is our 85mm Nikon f1.8, and they're both AI-s lenses. They're both vintage Nikons. I really like them. They bring a lot of character, and we shot the whole piece on these. So the window here was our main motivation for light, which meant that we wanted our key light to be coming from this side. And I think that we did a good job of that. We were able to get our wrap to wrap around here as much as possible. We do have that little Rembrandt triangle thing there, which is great. We've got a eye light for both eyes, which is beautiful as well. Our neg was just off screen here, and it was a 6x6 black floppy, which cuts all the light here, which gives us the contrast that we're after here. And then our key source was a big book light here, which was a 600D. The book light was coming up here, bouncing off of that, and then wrapping around her like that. We also had the Falcon Eyes RX24TD, which is my little 2x2 panel, and it was creating just this little rim light that we see on the back here as well. So it was coming from screen that way. She's still looking away from us over here off camera, so she's shadow side to camera, which is something that we're always trying to do. And we put a bunch of the plants everywhere. We made sure that it looked like this little sort of ecosystem back there for a nice looking frame. Yeah, I think it looks pretty good. Our B camera angle, we've got everything the same going on. Obviously it was shot at the same time, so it's going to present the same way, but we were able to see, we've got our eye lights here, which is the hugest thing on an interview. You don't want everyone dead eyes. We've got our Rembrandt triangle there. There's a big negative space here, but I kind of like that because she's able to look into a negative space, but our key light is still that 600D wrapping around her nicely. We still have a lot of neg on this side here from our 6x6 Duvetine, which we hung up on the side. And yeah, I'm really happy with these interview frames. We did allow for as much time for this as possible because I knew that there would be a fair few obstacles that we had to overcome so that we could make this as good as possible so that we could rest on it whenever we wanted to in the edit. This bar scene is the next scene that we'll talk about. Not my favorite scene, didn't hate it, but you know, as far as filmmaking goes, it was fairly average, it was all right. A couple of things at play here. We had the house lights on most of the time, and the house lights gave us the colors that we wanted, and then we matched them with our video lights. So we tried to make it shadow side to camera, but it's obviously very hard when you've got a lot of stage lights that you can't actually move, and we didn't have that many negs to be able to play around with. So we made sure that this part here to our camera side is shadow side to camera. It definitely wrapped around here more than I would have liked to have for this shot, for the over, but you know, we did try and make sure that there was some interest in the background, that there was practicals everywhere, that it wasn't just a dark frame, that there was things going on. And then that was complemented with our front-on shot, which probably looks even worse to be fair, but I tried to create some points of interest by putting in some shadows here so that we can have a frame within a frame, you know, to sort of create points of interest and a vector for the viewer to sort of look into as well. She is technically shadow side to camera here. We had our key light off screen here, providing that sort of warm tungsten glow on the side there, and it makes it feel like she was backlit, which technically she was, but yeah. The color separation I think did enough here to be able to make it feel like there was enough going on in terms of contrast and depth, but yeah, it was definitely a result of just trying to move fast and not having a lot of time there, and not having a lot of control over the lighting system there as well. This next scene is about Liz packing a bag and she goes and does work elsewhere. So the idea was that she was in her room and she was just filling her suitcase. So we had our key light kind of coming from the window here. The shears were actually doubled up. We had some as well, so we put some up. And really all that's happening here is there's the key light is motivated by the window, and then we have our little panel just off screen here, and that's just providing a little soft glow on this part of her face, so it just wraps around there. The rest of the room was doing enough to be able to just neg by itself, and the fall off of the room was enough for it to be able to just not bounce enough light back to fill in so that we had the contrast ratio that we were after. Yeah, again, just putting a couple of points of interest in here, making some practicals with the fairy lights and the lamps that were in there, just to create some points of interest for our frame. Then we moved in for a close shot as well, and I think this one turned out really nice. The screen grab's not the best here, but the same deal. We sort of relocated that frame. We call it detailing when we move in like that, and the window was still the key source, that big soft wrap for daylight. We matched our color temperature from the window, which was here, kicking off like that. So the light panel was about there, shining on, giving the little Rembrandt triangle that we're shooting for. We didn't have to walk a neg in here because the depth of the room was giving us enough fall off for the shadow side here to create some depth. Fairy lights working really nicely there, that beautiful 35mm f1.4 lens doing its thing, and yeah, happy with that scene. This scene here is your classic wide, medium, and tight. It's a pretty throwaway scene. It's just about her ordering some food, but it's worth just sort of noting what we did and how we were able to move fast as well. And the main way that we were able to do that was that we started wide and we worked our way in. So our main key light, once again, was the window here. That was doing most of the work by getting her shadow side to camera. We closed another window that was in the background here, which you can't see. But then we complemented that key light once again with our Falcon Eyes 2x2 grid. And it was just creating the rest of the fill on her face here, and it was creating that wrap and, if you like, a little Rembrandt triangle there. And then we checkerboarded it as well, so we put a light on here to make sure there was some interest in the foreground here. This was looking a little too washed out, so we moved a practical lamp in here, and it's doing the same thing there. So just another point of interest, bit of checkerboarding, bit of color. And then the room fall off was doing enough to be able to create shadow here. We were just using a very low level of light. Then we had a medium, same deal here. I'm not going to go through all this to bore you, but we relocated the light, detailed it once again to get in closer there, made sure we got that Rembrandt triangle, made sure that we had shadow side through here. She's still looking screen left, which means she was shadow side to camera, and then the window was just doing all this nice light in there. The extreme close-up is no different. Probably we moved the light a little bit again, I can't actually remember, but we wanted to get a soft source close to her face so the wrap was nice. It's not really a Rembrandt triangle here per se, but we do see the highlights falling off there, and there is a shadow here on her nose, so you could kind of, for argument's sake, call it a Rembrandt triangle. I'm not here to create an argument about that. Shadow's doing what I want it to. The practical, or the window, is practical because we framed it in there and you can see the source, which means the light is motivated from the window. It feels natural and it's doing what we want it to do. And that's a big part of documentary filmmaking, is working with what you have and then setting up lights when you have the opportunity to be able to do that. But pick and choose your battles when appropriate. This camping scene is a bit of a gag. There's an ultra wide here, and the campfire, we actually laid down the light mat here in front of the campfire, between the campfire and Liz. So what that did was it was able to make the fire seem like it was the light that was motivating her. Going in for a closer shot here was a medium, which was this. Because we were shooting through the fire, we were able to make that look like it was lighting her from underneath, when really she was almost in pitch black where that fire was. So the light mat was just lying on the ground here, kicking up light like this in front of her, creating quite a dramatic look. It's not particularly flattering, but it is motivated, and that's ultimately what we're going for. This scene I really struggled with. It's kind of a bummer, to be honest. It was a scene that I was really looking forward to doing, but the fact of the matter, ultimately, we didn't have enough firepower. Our lights weren't strong enough to be able to compete with the sun, and the sun is a very big light source. It's the biggest light source there is, so competing with that is often a hard task, and this was living proof of that. We were just using gear that we owned and had, and the 600D, we had it through a Fresnel lamp on the outside, and it just wasn't enough. We were trying to create a lighting gag where it would go through stained glass, and we set up some colors through a gobo, and we were shooting some light through there, and we hazed it, and we tried to make it work as much as we could, but we ended up with this. The contrast was nice enough, it is key lit from the side. It feels motivated because even though the lights behind her do look like they're the primary light source, everyone knows that churches have light sources coming from the side, so I think it does feel motivated enough. Maybe it's a bit of a cheat, I'm not too sure, but here's another example of us running out of time. Just the light that's skipping off that handrail is a little bit much, and it diverts the viewer's eye to there, which is not where you want it. You want it on Liz. It's this big, beautiful, powerful scene where she's doing an unreal performance, and I didn't really do it justice on my part, I don't think, which is a shame because it was a beautiful moment in the film. But, you know, it's not terrible, it's just not great. And I think this was my favorite setup of the film. I think I did the best job on lighting this one, and that's because it feels like a recording studio, but there's a performance element to it as well, and I think that it kind of ties in, I think, tastefully. Quickly to take you through this one, it was 2 lights that we had. My friend Greg lent me his RGB panel, which I'm super grateful for, and it was the blue light back here. So it stayed back here, it shone back here, it was behind her to make sure that it was still shadow side to camera, and it rim lit all of this back here. So her hair's nicely backlit, hair light, and our key light was once again the Falcon eyes, and it was off to this side. And you can see it's hitting the microphone here, it's hitting her, and it wraps around here as well, which is really nice. It gives us enough fall off on the highlights here to fall to shadow closer to camera and still get that depth that we're always looking for. And then we punched in as well, and I think that we did a good job there as well. You can actually see the light source here. We hazed up the room a little bit so you can see the particles sort of lighting up, but the key source is here. It's doing the same as it is on the wider shot, and it's wrapping nicely. We actually do get that Rembrandt triangle that we're looking for here all the time. And then our fill light back here is doing the same thing. It's lighting up her hair from behind. It's not falling off onto the shadow side, so we've got a good contrast ratio like we're looking for. And yeah, I think we did a really good job with this one. I'm really happy with it. The DV cameras, I'm not going to go into a big breakdown on that. It's something that we use as a tool to go into the past without actually having to recreate anything. But she also was a little bit more playful, so I think those scenes kind of helped her out where, you know, she's walking along the railing, kind of acting like a kid, and the whole premise of the film is that maybe she made it when she was a kid. So it was an important tool, and it was something that we used to sort of essentially go back in time. This is the frame that we finished the film with. There's no lighting breakdown here because the sun was just back here going behind the mountains, but it was an overcast day, so there's a big soft source across the top. And as much as she was shadow side to camera here, it would have been nice to have walked in a neg. If I had my time again, I definitely would have walked in either a light source behind so that this would have presented brighter, or a neg so that this would have presented darker. But I think it was a powerful shot. She looks great, and it was a nice little way to sort of finish the film just with a video portrait like that. These Nishika frames, I'll speak a little bit more in detail about in the next video, but for us, they were a way to be able to move from still to moving imagery. And it was a way to sort of change scenes and support an idea shift. And there definitely was a bit of a craze going on with these Nishika cameras before, or maybe a couple of years ago now, and I seem to have seen that die down a little bit, but I really like them. I think they're a cool way of bringing film to screen, as in 35mm film, which is something that I love. And it's just a cool way to be able to, move between ideas and move between still and moving imagery. And I think we did a good job of that. It was nice to just be able to sling it over your shoulder while you're doing some sort of A-roll. You can, in between a scene or a setup, you can just bust out the Nishika and pop off a portrait or two. And it does a lot for the edit. It brings something different to the screen, and that's what we were trying to do. All right, that'll do it for me today. Thanks so much for watching. Hopefully you got something out of this. If you did, give it a like, subscribe. It helps me out. It helps me wanting to make these. I got a lot of positive feedback from the first few videos, so thank you all very much for that. I really do appreciate it. But if this is something that you like, then tell your friends, and I'm grateful to be on this journey, and hopefully you're getting something out of this, because I certainly am, and we can continue this filmmaking journey together. See you next time.